Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Ahead of the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, President Zelensky has said he is willing to step down if there is peace. Alluding to NATO membership, Zelensky also responded to Trump's dictator comments as EU leaders arrive in Kyiv for the anniversary. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that Israel may resume the war in Gaza amid uncertainty over the ceasefire with Hamas. Israeli military action has stepped up around Gaza and in the West Bank as Arab leaders meet in Egypt to discuss the war. Friedrich Merz's Conservatives have won the German federal election, while the far-right AfD finishing second. With the record vote share of over 20%, Merz has ruled out working with the AfD, but forming a coalition could be complicated after the Social Democrats suffered their worst results ever. Some US administration officials have urged federal workers to ignore a message from Elon Musk's Doge. It called for staff to detail what work they had done in the week or resign. One of the organisations urging workers to ignore the request is the FBI, run by Trump ally Kash Patel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued a stark warning that war in Gaza could resume following a delay in the release of Palestinian prisoners who were set to be freed. This hold-up has also stalled a key U.S. Israeli decision regarding those detainees. Meanwhile, in a significant development, Israeli tanks have entered the West Bank for the first time in over 2 decades, signalling a new phase of military operations. The Israeli army has announced plans to ramp up operational readiness around Gaza, further raising concerns of renewed conflict. At the same time, diplomatic efforts continue with an Arab League summit set to take place in Egypt, an event notable for the presence of the Syrian leader. Adding to the complexities, Hamas has released a video of hostages, intensifying international scrutiny and deepening the humanitarian crisis. Joining us to discuss this topic, we're first joined by Ambassador Mark Sofer, who is a former Israeli ambassador to India, who is joining us from Israel. Ambassador Sofer, thank you very much for your time. I want to first get a real understanding of the feeling in Israel. Is there a feeling there that war is on the cusp and there is a return to action very soon?
Well, as long as Hamas has any type of foothold in Gaza, war is always a possibility. I would perhaps even more than that. But I think that what is most important right now for Israeli society and Israeli people, I don't know if it could say that about every part of the Israeli government, but certainly the society is to get the hostages out. You've seen the conditions they've been in. You're hearing stories of how they were tortured, psychologically, physically, mentally, in every way. And this really is our top priority.
Yes, staying with you, Ambassador Sofer, I want to look at the comments from Benjamin Netanyahu. He says that they're ready, and we of course have seen troop and military intensification around Gaza, but also into the West Bank. Do you think this is a start of a more full-scale military assault or military incursion, or do you think this is just preventative based on what's happened in recent days? Of course, we had the explosions on the buses, we had issues with the ceasefire as well, not going to plan. So do you think there's something else behind it, or this is just what was expected given what's happened?
I think it's a mixture of both. On the one hand, it's to put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages immediately. And that has international support throughout the civilized world. But I also think it sends a clear message to Hamas that we are ready. We are going to continue the war to the eradication of Hamas militarily and politically. And that's really all there is to it. I'm not speaking on behalf of the government. I'm not a government spokesman, and certainly not of the current Israeli government. But I think that this is pretty much consensual among Israeli people. Now, when you talk about Jenin and when you talk about the West Bank, you mentioned en passant about the buses. This was a major issue here. There were 5 buses, which 3 blew up and 2 didn't blow up, and they went off in the evening. But had they gone off in the morning, which was planned to happen, and it was a mistake that it didn't, there would have been mega deaths, literally hundreds and hundreds of people killed. This is considered to be a huge terrorist operation, And we have zero tolerance for terrorism. And I think that the majority, I would like to hope that the majority of Palestinians believe that terrorism is getting them absolutely nowhere. It certainly hasn't over the past 30, 40 years. And that now we have to try a different tack of trying to find a way forward instead of blowing up, killing, massacring, and maiming, which has been so much of what we've seen, certainly in Gaza, and to a certain extent in the Hamas footholds like the Jenin refugee camp.
Yes, and moving on, we're also joined by Ali M. Abushbak, who is an independent Palestinian researcher joining us from Cairo. Thank you for being here, Ali. I'd like to look at the hold-up that we're currently faced with regarding these prisoners who were set to be released and haven't. I want to look at the potential implications that Hamas are seeing with this, but also what the people of Palestine are feeling. Of course, this next step, it was an exchange. 6 hostages were freed and the prisoners weren't returned. So what's your feeling on that, and what is the feeling in Palestine at the moment and in Gaza?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a very sad day and a heartbreaking day when this, since Israel is not committed to its obligation for the ceasefire in Gaza and the deal. Unfortunately, there is no hope, and there is what is happening on the ground. Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, not Israel, because according to the last poll for the Israeli I-24 television channel, according to that the poll, more than 60% of the Israeli, they are supporting to move forward to the second phase of the negotiation, while also 25% of the Israeli, they are supporting to resume the war in Gaza, and more than 53% of the Israeli community, they are supporting the ceasefire in Gaza and not returning to the war. In this aesthetic, Benjamin Netanyahu put it in his bag, and he doesn't care about the Israeli population. He doesn't care about the families of the hostages or captive in Israel, who's weekly protesting in the square of captive or hostages in Tel Aviv, and they are growing day after day, and they are got supported from the Israeli community. Benjamin Netanyahu, what he's doing on the ground, he's trying to buy the time for his coalition government and make Smotrich and Ben Gvir, the far-right wing in Israel, be satisfied from his policy. And also what is, no one can read what is in the mind of Benjamin Netanyahu, but we are coming to the, next week, there is a holy month for Muslim people, it's Ramadan, and we can see that it will be extended, the violence in Jerusalem, especially in Al-Aqsa Mosque, when the people and the Muslim community, they are gathering to offer praise in that area. So it will increase the violence in Jerusalem as well as in West Bank. Now in Gaza also, he's ready to return to the war. But I guess this is just only a psychological war for the Palestinians to put pressure on Hamas to release the coming captive in Gaza. On the ground, the people are unfortunate, and they are getting receive this news to delay the exchange captive and the prisoner between Hamas and Israel by heartbreaking, while the fragile of ceasefire, it seems that we are going to the end of the way between ceasefire between Hamas and Gaza and Israel.
Yes, also joining us to discuss this topic is Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza, who is a foreign affairs expert, joining us from London. Dr. Mirza, thank you very much also for being here. How important is this meeting of the Arab nations, and what impact could it have in potentially providing another option for the future of Gaza other than the one that Trump has proposed?
Well, it's a good sign that the Arab nations are coming together. I don't think it is going to serve any purpose, because these countries have got lame governments. They have no teeth. So any discussion about ceasefire, about prisoners, should start with the condemnation of the attack of October the 7th by Hamas. And that is where it all started. And it has got a historical background to it as well. But if you want to condemn or say anything about Netanyahu or Israel, your starting point should be that I condemn the attack of 7th October on innocent people. And this distinguished guest, your distinguished guest, Mr. Ali, is smiling. I mean, the Palestinians have a problem. The problem is not with Israel. The problem with the Palestinians that they fail to recognize that all this destruction has brought upon them not by Israel, but because of Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization. They have been brainwashed. These children, from a very young age in the schools, have taught a particular narrative about their history, which is based on nothing but lies and hate towards the Jews and the Christians. So you can't reason with these people. And where does this say that if you are arrested for committing a crime in a country and you're sentenced or you're under trial, that another country should come in and kill your people, take them hostage, and then demand you to abandon your trial process and hand them over? So from the very start, this demand about releasing prisoners and all that, I don't buy into that. I think this is a larger, Hamas is a proxy of Iran and a wider regional game. And Hamas is basically has been used. This Palestinian gentleman should understand. They have been used by Iran to sabotage the India-Middle East economic corridor, which was being agreed upon by Israel and India and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, so that there could be an economic corridor, number one. Number two, and final point is that Saudi Arabia and Israel were about to sign the diplomatic formally establishing diplomatic relations. So that is another thing. If that would have happened, it would have ended this taboo of recognizing the state of Israel. Finally, I think that Gaza, West Bank, they should become part of Greater Israel. Historically, if you see, to be honest, I mean, from a religious perspective as well, Jews were here first, then the dawn of Islam. So
yes, Dr. Mirza, I'm really sorry to cut you off. We only have a minute left, and I do want to get Ali's response to something that you said there in regards to the Palestinian people. Ali, just very quickly, we've got a minute or so. Do you think the feeling amongst Palestinians, considering what's happened over the last 15, 16 months, do you think their opinions on Hamas and their allegiance towards Hamas has changed given the devastation?
Well, this is a very good and tough question. In fact, I was thinking, I believe that you will ask me this question, and I'm afraid to give you a statement, but for 15 months of the war in Gaza, people are suffering a lot, and especially civilian in Gaza. So also even the mentality of Hamas, maybe they changed, because in the very beginning, Hamas holding on the power to Gaza, holding to the power on Gaza. And now Hamas statement through their channels and through their spokesman, they are ready to give up the power in Gaza. But here, the main question I want to ask Mark Mr. Mark about it. Benjamin Netanyahu, he said we will not let Hamas to control Gaza. As well as Benjamin Netanyahu, he doesn't want to empower the Palestinian Authority to control Gaza. If Hamas not controlling Gaza and Palestinian Authority who's giving Israel and coordinated with Israel, and also with Palestinian Authority recognize Israel as a state, as a state. So who would be control Gaza? People in Gaza, the last concern for them, who will control them? Even they don't care about if Israel will occupy Gaza and will rule Gaza. They don't have an issue. But Israel should take their responsibility toward the people and the civilian in Gaza. So here is the main things. We have seen it during the handover, the ceremonies. A few people, they are gathering and supporting Hamas, but on the ground and the reality, people get frustrated of continuous war between Israel and Gaza. And I'm wondered about this question: who will control Gaza? If Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't accept Hamas and he doesn't accept Palestinian Authority, and he will not let the Palestinian technocrat to control Gaza or West Bank, then who will control Gaza? Who will govern Gaza?
Well, let's very briefly throw that to Ambassador Sofa then. Do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to stand behind what Donald Trump has said and let the US come in and do what they want to and have Israel almost as the peacekeepers in that instance, allowing Gaza to be rebuilt? Or do you think that there's another plan for the Israeli government?
Well, I think to answer that question and the question of Mr. Ali just a few moments ago, I would say the following. Number one, there's very few issues in Israel which people, I've said this before on this program, which Israel has a consensus on. There's almost nothing that we are consensual about in that we are a democratic society, and we argue. And we are in a difficult situation. We're not Iceland, and we're not some place which is living in complete and utter tranquility. But if one thing we are in complete consensus about is Hamas. There will not be any Hamas control militarily or politically inside of Gaza or anywhere, period. And I think it's time that all Palestinians, not just the more moderate ones or the more intellectual ones, internalize this fact. It will not happen. And if it will happen, if they continue to, it's a recipe for continued war, continued bloodshed, and continued conflict. So we have to really they have to really internalize that. Number two, yes, Mr. Netanyahu has said that not the Palestinian Authority. I agree to a certain extent that the Palestinian Authority today is not capable of running. It can't run the West Bank. It can't run itself, and it certainly can't run Gaza. It's corrupt and with complete inability to do anything. So if it's not completely refurbished and completely refreshed and completely overturned, in which case it won't be the Palestinian authorities we know today. We'll be in a different ball game. And you mentioned the issue of the Arab meeting in Cairo. Now, I think what's happened, and this is perhaps as a result of the Trump plan, which many people can subscribe to, many people don't subscribe to it. But for the first time, I think for a long time at least, we've seen the Arab world putting on the table, Egypt running it, a possible solution for Gaza. Which is built on technocrats, yes. There are plenty of intellectual technocrats inside of Palestinian society, plenty of brilliant people there that can run it, and they are not corrupt, and they are not supportive of terrorism, and they are able to, with international help, of course, with international Arab and international financing, Gulf world, etc., yes, to rebuild Gaza. I think we may be seeing here the possibility or the beginning of something which might take root. It's too early to say at this stage, but certainly, and I repeat this again and again, not Hamas and the Palestinians, all Palestinians, 100% of them have to internalize that, period. There are no two ways about this. So the Palestinian Authority, let's see what happens there. Let's see if it changes its spots, and yes, what will happen in Gaza.
Unfortunately, Ambassador Sofa, we do have to move on. We've run a little bit over there, but thank you very much, Ali, for joining us. Ambassador Sofa and also Dr. Mirza will be staying with us as we stay in the Middle East. And in Lebanon, an Iranian delegation has met with President Michel Aoun, who delivered a clear message. Lebanon should not become a battleground for the wars of others. His statement comes amid escalations as Israel bombed southern and eastern Lebanon, intensifying cross-border hostilities. Meanwhile, Hezbollah held a massive funeral for its former leader Hassan Nasrallah, with hundreds of thousands of people in attendance across the day. The event took place under high tensions as Israeli jets flew overhead, sending a strong message to Hezbollah. Adding to the volatility, Iran has issued new statements on Israel, further stoking regional uncertainty, with military strikes intensifying and diplomatic talks continuing. What is next for Lebanon and the region? Ambassador Sofra, I will come back to you on this one. Of course, Hezbollah, as they were a few months ago, we know they're much weaker. But is this a bit of a reminder for the Israeli government, the Israeli people and the Israeli army that there is still a large amount of support for Hezbollah within Lebanon?
Well, the large amount of support for Lebanon within the Lebanese, in Lebanon for the Hezbollah, within the Lebanese parts of the Lebanese Shia. I don't think there's large, outside of that, I don't think there's very much support for Hezbollah at all. Hezbollah is decimated. But I think that the Iranian part that you were speaking about is very important. And I've said this before here as well, and I'll repeat it again. I make a distinction between the Iranian people and the Iranian government. It's very important. The Iranian people are erudite, they're very forward-looking, they're educated, and they have the possibility of moving forward, but they are occupied by a medieval, hate-ridden regime. Now, if we look around wherever the Iranian regime has its foothold, be it in Yemen, be it in Syria, be it in the Hezbollah, be it Hamas, be it in Iran itself, be it in the Western Sahara, there is only death, destruction, murder, and instability. That is what the Iranian regime has to contribute today to the stability of the Middle East. Now, they've lost their foothold in Lebanon. They've lost their foothold in Syria. Hamas is severely weakened and, well, as I said earlier, will completely, hopefully, dissipate into thin air and on the dust heap of history. And Iran really is the mastermind, or a mastermind, of all instability in the region. And I think they're doing much more damage to the Palestinians than is actually understandable. They are forcing the extremists on the Palestinian people. They are helping the Hamas, helping Hezbollah, which did nothing but fire hundreds of thousands of rockets into Israel one after 7th of October. And I think really here lies the rub. So we're talking of trying to move forward to a new Middle East, a Middle East in which the forces of good will fight against the forces of evil. It's no longer Arab Israel or even Israeli Palestinian. It is if you will, a coalition of forward-looking peoples and governments to eradicate the region from the hate and the horror perpetrated by the Hezbollah Shiites, perpetrated by Iran, perpetrated by the Al-Qaeda forces and others inside of Syria. And I think that we have moved certain way towards this direction, and hopefully that we can build on it with others in the Middle East.
Yes, Dr. Mirza, thank you for sticking with us. I want to look at the action and the strikes that we saw as well. Is this a message from Israel, do you think, just saying, don't forget we're here, irrelevant of the celebrations and the memories that are being shared amongst the supporters of Hezbollah over their former leaders, both of them? Do you think this is just Israel saying the ceasefire is here and don't forget that, and don't think that there's any return to what you once were?
No, I think that when Netanyahu decided to enter Gaza, it was to finish off Hamas, totally eliminate Hamas. And I think that until and unless Hamas as an organization, as a terrorist outfit is completely wiped out, including Hezbollah as an institution of terror is completely wiped out, and the Iranian regime, as Mark has said, that it's a very erudite nation, but the regime, until that regime is smashed to pieces, you forget about peace in the Middle East. Because these are those who are creating conflict and creating havoc and creating terrorist acts in the Middle East. And all the Arab countries, one more thing I would just like to mention here is that I have realized over the decade that what are they afraid of? The Muslim Arab states, what are they afraid of from Israel? they are afraid of democracy. They are afraid of the way the Israeli society is run, with debate, with argument, with consensus which comes out of that. And they see that as a threat to their totalitarian dictatorships, whether it's in the form of a king or in the form of a military general. So I think that the aim is not that whether there's going to be peace or whether there should be war. All tactics and methods should be at hand to achieve the final goal, which is the total destruction and dismantling of the Iranian government, the Hamas network, and Lebanese. And when I say that, people think, oh my God, are you not a Muslim? It is not about being a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew. It's about peace. And when we say peace, I do not support two-nation theory. I think it should be one country, a two-state theory. It should be Israel, greater Israel, and everybody should live in peace. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza, and also thank you to Ambassador Mark Sofa. We will, of course, continue to bring you all the updates from across the Middle East as we get them. Let's now take a look at the latest updates coming in from across Europe. European Union leaders have arrived in Kyiv to commemorate the third anniversary of Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The visit demonstrates solidarity with Ukraine amid tensions between Kyiv and the new U.S. administration. Discussions are expected to focus on peace, security guarantees and the future of collective security in Europe. Pope Francis remains in critical condition with blood tests indicating mild kidney failure. The 88-year-old pontiff has been hospitalised since February the 14th due to double pneumonia and a complex infection. Doctors describe his prognosis as guarded. The Vatican has requested prayers for his recovery. The European Union has scheduled a summit for March the 6th to discuss the ongoing situation in Ukraine and the strengthening of EU defence capabilities. This meeting comes as the US President signals a shift in policy towards Moscow. This has prompted EU leaders to re-evaluate their strategic approach to regional security and military support for Ukraine. A British couple in their 70s has been arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan. The couple previously operated education and training programs in the country for 18 years. They were detained on the 1st of February while returning to their home in Bamyan province. They decided to remain in Afghanistan after the Taliban seized power in 2021. The reason for their arrest has not been disclosed. Swiss authorities have detained an Australian man suspected of stabbing and seriously injuring an individual in a central Zurich shop. The incident occurred on Saturday with a 28-year-old suspect apprehended at the scene. The victim was taken to hospital for further care. The motive of the attack remains under investigation and identities have not been disclosed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced his readiness to step down if it would secure peace or facilitate Ukraine's entry into NATO. Concurrently, he has rejected US demands for a $500 billion mineral extraction deal, arguing it would impose unsustainable debt for future generations. These developments come amid heightened tensions and ongoing conflict in the region. Let's take a look in this report.
З останнього, якщо мир для України, якщо вам дуже потрібно, щоб я залишив свій пост, я готовий. Друга історія, можу поміняти це на НАТО, якщо є такі умови одразу, щоб довго про це не говорити. Я фокусуюсь на безпеці України сьогодні, а не за 20 років. І не збираюсь бути у влади десятиріччя. Тому це, напевно, мій фокус і бажана мрія.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has stated his willingness to resign if it would bring peace to Ukraine or facilitate the country's admission into NATO following the US's increasing pressure on the government. Despite pressure from the US, Zelensky has rejected a $500 billion mineral extraction deal, citing concerns over long-term debt for Ukrainians. The proposed deal was intended to repay wartime aid provided by the US under the Biden administration. However, Zelensky asserts that such a deal would be detrimental to Ukraine's future. Zelensky emphasized that the aid received was in the form of grants, not loans, and should not be repaid through such resource deals. The Ukrainian president also highlighted the absence of specific security guarantees in the proposed agreement, further justifying his rejection.
Від Трампа я дуже хочу розуміння одне одного, почути, що відбувається, які гарантії безпеки потрібні Україні. Частково це було в плані перемоги України, щоб Україна була сильна за столом перемовин. І гарантії безпеки від Трампа дуже потрібні.
This decision comes amidst US-Russia peace talks led by President Trump and Vladimir Putin, from which Ukraine has been excluded. Trump has criticized Zelensky, labeling him a dictator for not holding elections during the ongoing conflict, to which Zelensky responded by citing the impracticality of elections during war.
Я би не назвав ці слова в мою адресу від президента Трампа компліментами, м'яко кажучи. Я розумію це, так. Але для чого ображатись? Ображався би на слово «диктатор» той, хто є диктатор. А так я це сприймаю як, ну що ж, зробиш. Ну, будемо якось жити зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. Да, диктаторами точно не будемо, просто не цікаво. Не цікаво, розумієте? Я законно обраний президент, не через якусь силу, тощо прийшов до влади. Не прийшов, мене обрали, 73%.
Zelensky has stated that he remains open to negotiations that would benefit Ukraine, but insists on fair agreements that do not impose unfair burdens on the country. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That is all we have time for, but we'll be back very soon with more of your latest world news.